because she convinced the federal government to put the Statue of Sacagawea in Chautauqua Park in Gladstone. And that was the
All right, welcome everyone to the June Citizen Involvement Committee meeting. We have a few things just reminding if you want to make a comment on anything on the agenda or not on the agenda, you need to fill out a comment card that are in the back of the room, and then you can speak to that. We will call the roll. Barbara?
Okay, Shelley Beatty,
present.
Mark Matheson,
Here.
Linda Basinger, Dennis Anderson,
Here.
Mike Mitchell,
Here.
Amy Wilhite,
Here.
Joyce Gifford,
Here.
Jesse Buss,
Here.
Gordon Wilson,
Here.
myself, Steve Van Heverbeck. Okay, I think he's away. Karen Morey,
Present.
Harris Gwynn.
Please remove Harris. He's no longer
He's no longer.
a member. Let's finish that sentence. He's no longer a resident of Oregon. Let's make that sound better.
Bill McConnell,
Here.
Gary's excused. Vern Johnson,
Here.
Georgia Reagan, Brian Boyce.
Okay, thank you. We'll-
Oh.
Roy Harris,
Yeah, you
we
should
got
have
an
been
email
added.
that he had been appointed. We sent the stuff to the city, and then we received word back that
Christina,
he was
did that
the
just get
Hilldale representative.
right?
Yes, and I think there's Katie Riggs and I are still coordinating who is implements that. So I apologize, but that was sent. So
Yeah.
So we
that-
need to add him on there.
we can add him on
Okay.
the roster.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, I was on last meeting. We had,
Right, can you spell your name for Barbara just to...
yeah, Roy, R-O-Y, Harris, H-A-R-R-I-S.
For Hellendale, yes, thank you. We'll get this right, these spreadsheets. Okay, just a reminder that we will not have a meeting in September because of it falls on Labor Day. July the 4th is on Tuesday, so we need to decide as a committee. In the past, if the 4th fell on a Monday, we canceled. If it wasn't on a Monday, we didn't always. So we need a consensus if we would like to hold a meeting in July. Thoughts? How about this? Raise your hand if you can be here in July.
Want to be here.
Okay. That's enough people. I think we will hold the meeting in July. Which is great. And then I'm going to pass these around so that if we wait till roundtable, we might miss it. But the safety fair and the neighborhood night out, as a reminder, we've all agreed to go to at least one event in the year. And so here's our two that at this moment that we have. I have ordered, I'm working with Katie Riggs to get new banners. We don't know what happened to one of the banners, and so we want a small banner in the front that says something like, "What neighborhood do you call home?" which is a great opener. Then we have the map to see where people live, and then in the back, I can't remember exactly the wording. I'll let you know when it gets ordered, but something about working together so that we can make our booth stand out a little bit more. So we will send those around. And first up, we welcome Laura Turway back, giving a presentation about their Community Development Department relocation.
Good evening. Thank you. Laura Turway, Community Development Director for the City of Oregon City. Thank you for hosting me on this side of the table. I am here this evening to just give you an update of some work that the Community Development Department is working on. We are in a lease. We're at 221 Malala Avenue, Suite 200, and we've been there for about 9 years, and we're in a lease, and that lease is coming up. And so we had been working to figure out what to do. And so we've had a couple of City Commission work sessions on this, and we are working towards relocation at the Mount Pleasant Annex. And so I wanted to come and tell you all about that land use wise. As we all know, according to our code, when we propose a zone change or an amendment to the comprehensive plan, that group has to go to the neighborhood association meeting, and we're meeting with Rivercrest but this is sort of a biggie one, so I figured I would share it with you as well. So the purpose of our project is community development to the annex at Mount Pleasant. You can kind of see on the screen a bird's eye view of Mount Pleasant. So the annex is a building that's located closest to Warner Parrott, Central Point, Leland, and Lynn Avenue, and Warner Milne. Our existing location, our lease is technically up at the end of April 2018, and so we're starting a planning process to go through the proper permitting and soon to be a construction process for our, hopefully our new spot, which is the Mount Pleasant Annex. At this point, we have hired a consultant to help us through this process and do the plans and that kind of thing. And that's been approved by the City Commission. I'm meeting with you, and then later in July, we hope to meet with the City Commission to get the final blessing to actually submit a land use application. So we're in that beginning stages right now. So I wanted to go over what the annex looks like now. So this is the before. It's a pretty strong structure. We did an analysis from a structural engineer, and it looks like it's got good bones, but it has a couple of serious issues. Like in a lot of buildings, there's not been maintenance over time, and so it needs new roof, new siding, and other things in order to accommodate us. Here's the general layout as it stands today. So we know it was sort of an office use at one point. It was a printing place back when printing places and binding places were a thing.
Media center.
It was a media center for the school district, right? And so it's got a main corridor, and it used to have 4 classrooms, 2 on either side at one point, and now it has 2 classrooms on one side and a gym. I'll kind of walk you through it. Here's the main corridor. It's a pretty simple building. Here's classroom number 1, sort of just an open space that's used for a bit of storage at the moment, and it's pretty underutilized. There's someone's office in there. And then there's a gym. Gym is a loose term. It's more of like some equipment, and that's it. And the gym is for a police department to help support the police department. They believe in physical fitness, and so that is part of that. So it's not a gym for all employees or things like that. So the applications that we're proposing is to amend the comprehensive plan to allow it to be institutional, which does include government offices. So if the goal is to relocate community development, what we need to do is make sure that the zoning supports that. And then also with that, we would do a zone change. And then there's minor site plan design review, which is a wordy way to say new siding and maybe some little exterior stuff, but no addition or nothing big like that. Really just moving in and doing some type of tenant improvement is the big picture. As a separate note, it needs a new roof, and if we have to move in April, if we go through this big process, by the time it gets to approval, it will start to rain when we need to do a new roof. So we may do a roof ahead of time. We'll see what the commission's opinion is on that. So you may see just a roof and then nothing else for a while because it's not raining. So trip cap is written on here. I'll tell you all a little bit about that. This is the comprehensive plan map as it stands today. This site is a little bit odd. It has, there's this blue line around here. That's the site. And so it's blue, which is institutional for a majority of the site for the comprehensive plan designation. And then this little bit right here is a medium density residential comprehensive plan designation. So we need to switch this brown to blue so that the whole site is more cohesive. And for the zoning, this is the tricky part. This is actually zoned a low-density residential zoning designation, which is odd because it is an institutional comprehensive plan designation, so something's not quite right. We've done a bunch of research. We're still trying to figure out when that happened. We know it was very long ago. And so we want to sync that up because this low-density residential zoning designation should have a comprehensive plan should be associated with R10, the zoning, so those don't match. So we want to right the wrong there. So all of this would turn to institutional for the whole site. The trip cap comes in place because what we want to do is just to say that the amount of trips in an automobile that the site accumulates today, meaning as the school is there and then as the annex is fully built, if you were to imagine it used as the classroom use, we want to keep that the same. So we would be looking to put a condition on the zone change that it can't increase anymore. So we're not saying this whole site is going to be institutional, which allows a wide variety of things, such as offices. And that would be a lot of trips if the whole 8-acre site was offices, right? So what we're saying is we're just going to keep it as it is right now. If the city wants to do more development on site later, they can, but they would have to do a process to do that. But at this site, we want to keep the school there. The school will probably continue to be a school for another year. So we'll kind of we'll be on site with the school for a year or so, likely. And then we'll just move into that annex. And so there's traffic studies and things like that that are done that have been looked at the difference between an office, government office use and the school use, and they're about the same. So we're a little bit less than the square footage that was for the annex. The whole square footage of the annex is about 7,000 square feet. We would be taking half. So we would take the 2 classroom side, and then we'd take about a third of the gym. And so that is equivalent to about the space that we have right now. So it puts us in the same square footage with a little bit of room to grow when and if the police station is built on site and they move out of the gym. So it sets the stage for a general office on site and room for expansion or flexibility for other departments if that need to as well. Again, our next steps are to keep working on this, talk to the neighborhood association, and talk to the city commission at a work session in July. And if they agree we're moving in the right track, then we would submit an application for land use in July, August, sometime around there. And then once that happens, you'll get that notification like you would any other land use application. And the application would go before Planning Commission as well as the City Commission for review. Any questions? Sounds exciting?
Yes.
Wonderful.
Mark?
Just 2 questions.
Sure.
And it might be related, unrelated, or whatever, you can decide, but I've noticed there's a pattern of putting city buildings within neighborhoods, like the police is being planned to being tucked into a neighborhood, the operations is pretty much tucked into a neighborhood. And this is going to be tucked into a neighborhood. What's the advantage of that? Because it seems that a lot of official buildings are being put into the neighborhoods where it kind of changes the contrast of the neighborhood itself. Second of all, with the annexation of the 300 acres, have you ever thought of, I know it's kind of reverse, but you have 300 acres, for the annexation. The gentleman doing the presentation said it wouldn't be developed for a while. Has the city thought about just putting a public safety building out there and putting everything under one? I mean, I know it's a reverse in your plans, but you do have 300 acres out there you can have all sorts of fun with without being involved in our neighborhoods.
Yeah, good question. So the reason why we like this site is, one is because we own it. So right now we're paying rent, and there's efficiencies when we use our existing sites. So we don't have to pay ourselves rent and things like that. So overall, the city in general is better off. The other thing is that this site is for community development, which is the planning and the building departments. It's actually really centrally located for us because a lot of our inspections and customers come from the places on the edge where we're seeing development the most. And so we have got really good feedback from our customers as far as the central proximity location for them. The site is really good for co-location of businesses. So if and when the police station gets built on site, we could say use their really big conference room for meetings. We could have some efficiencies if we use the same cleaning people. There's a lot of things that we could have for efficiency-wise if we locate near them. And for example, if they have a big meeting room like this, and we would be able to use that there. that would be helpful for us and lead to greater efficiencies. So for the other sites, we did do quite a bit of searching for other sites to figure out what the best site would be in the long run, and this was by far the most efficient, definitely fiscally responsible, but also in the time frame that we need to move out of our building as well. But I think it's a wonderful long-term solution to locate back to other people. We have always got the comment of like, kind of, why are we on Malala and separated? So it is kind of nice to be in a permanent spot and not moving around so much. So we've been on Malala. We'll be there 10 years, so we're kind of bouncing around a little bit. So it'll be good to really invest into that infrastructure that we already have. Also, it's on a bus line, which is good, and there's a couple other key features that we'd be looking for, so we can best serve the community.
Karen?
Just to clarify, every location in the city is in someone's neighborhood. This is in Rivercrest, and the Rivercrest neighborhood has overwhelmingly supported the police department development. And Laura will be presenting on this on Thursday, and I suspect we'll get equal approval. So hopefully we'll be saying welcome to the neighborhood.
Thank you.
Well, I'm sorry.
Mark.
No?
If I have another question, clarify.
Okay. Mark.
In what Karen said, it wasn't an insinuation that or making a contrast of everybody has somebody in their neighborhood. Of course they do. But it's the land use. It's the land use of the concentration. You mentioned efficiency. I noticed the police. You noticed the police. So you said something about the police department. The fact that is that in emergency management, the police department is basically the authority for the city. It doesn't make sense for the police department to be away from the operations center. So as far as efficiency, as you're talking about, it would make sense that a centralized public safety building like the one that I was involved with, the city of Milwaukee, would make sense. Just to point out.
Let's just keep it on the planning department building.
And as there's criteria for the zone change and comprehensive plan amendment, it refers to our comprehensive plan, and then that it's got guiding principles for public facilities as well. And so we think that we meet that.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Any questions?
Any other
Give
questions?
me a call.
Laura?
We'll see you Thursday night.
Roy?
Just, if I can give a little background, is that the building over on Pearl you're moving from?
Uh-huh.
And do we just rent the space there? Or?
We do.
I guess I was always in the assumption it was a city building.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
They're just upstairs in part of the upstairs.
Yeah. Better parking, we think, in this one, too.
Yes.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Well received by our customers. So.
All right, Laura.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is John Lewis, who he first has a presentation about how the city reviews public and private stormwater projects, and then after that we will add another agenda item. He can go on right on into updating us on public works, or you can switch them around, whichever's easiest for you.
Well, I'll definitely make it shorter because you're right, there's lots of presentations tonight. So actually I will introduce Alita Froman Goodrich, who many of you probably know. She's our city engineer. She's been with the city, I'm going to guess, 10 years? 11 years?
11 years.
11 years. And so she and I reside in this building here, and she takes on really a lot of the work with regard to either project management or development review. And we both were involved, but she's been implementing the stormwater and grading design guidelines. So when this request came up, she offered, and I accepted that she could put the presentation together and present it. So she might present it accurately.
All right, Alita.
Okay, good evening. My name's Alita Froman Goodrich, City Public Works Engineer. And tonight I'd like to present to you the city's 2015 stormwater and grading design standards and how that applies to the requirements of new development. Let's see. Okay. In 2015, the city adopted new stormwater design standards. One of the goals was to meet current regulation from the Oregon Department of Environmental Quality. They passed new regulations that various agencies had to comply with within a certain time period. From those adoptions, it required all new development to meet and comply with those new design standards. If they triggered development that was intensive enough to use these design stormwater management standards. And the newly adopted standards really target matching the natural surface conditions of the area prior to development going into those areas. So pre-existing surface conditions. It's also targeted to reduce the stormwater runoff volumes, the duration of those volumes, and the rate of the discharge. It also prioritizes low impact development, which is more of natural stormwater facilities like planters and rain gardens. And it's also targeting treating the water, approximately 80% of that runoff water. So the triggers that require development to use the design standards are any new developments that would have 5,000 square feet of new impervious surfaces, roofs, parking lots, etc., or replacing those impervious surfaces. In our Natural Resources Overlay District, the trigger is for 500 square feet of new impervious surfaces. And in the Natural Resources Overlay District, for the existing impervious surfaces that are being disturbed, it would be 1,000 square feet. And then erosion control measures are also triggered for any disturbance of 1,000 square feet. The stormwater, the new development design facilities that the designers would have to comply with really are 3 different primary manuals, codes, and a calculator that we have. So the design standard manuals, we actually have it online, but looks something like this when you print it all out. So it's a nice, healthy 9 different chapters to work through. There's a sizing calculator that helps with consistency of sizing those management facilities so that everyone is using the same design criteria for sizing them. And then the stormwater municipal codes support all of the requirements and when those thresholds that we just went over are triggered. Just some basics on stormwater runoff. Went right after a storm, rain event, and snowmelt, we get runoff into our storm facilities. And with development and urbanization, although those impervious surfaces do pick up sediment, pesticides, oil and grease, trash and debris, and if there's not proper stormwater management facilities put in place, those get carried down and conveyed into our water systems, our Willamette rivers and Clackamas River. So trying to maintain good high quality standards and meeting DEQ's regulations, we implement with these design standards the best management practices, which do again include low impact type facilities, which are going to look quite natural because the goal of these facilities are to have that stormwater runoff infiltrate into the ground as best as possible. Whatever doesn't infiltrate goes through the systems there with the plants helping with water quality and treatment, and then eventually then it is controlled as far as the discharge amount into our conveyance systems that eventually take it downstream into our waterways. So again, the BMP sizing tool is a tool that we've have for our designers of these systems that meet the criteria and regulation required for a high quality reduction in both volume, rate of discharge, and treatment of that water. The sizing is really again geared towards low impact facilities, our stormwater planters, rain gardens, swales, detention ponds. These designs have we're probably just starting to see some of them in the city because after the codes and design standards were adopted in 2015. As new projects went through land use, they're now starting to bring in their construction plans for development of those facilities, and so we're just starting to construct some of these throughout the city. So we'll start seeing more of like roadside planters in the public right-of-way. Rain gardens and swale type treatments, especially in the commercial areas where there's parking lots. They'll drain into a swale that might be between the impervious areas. And then this is probably something you've seen typically around subdivisions are large size detention ponds. And those have also changed a bit in design, having a under drain system that the water does go down and go through an infiltration type system before it discharges into the flow control manholes. So the city has all of these design standards online at this website. The designers, again, of these stormwater systems are going to our webpage and working from our design standards manual that I've shown you here. They're also using the BMP sizing tool, which is the calculator to size these stormwater facilities, and they're also meeting the code requirements for the triggers that would require them to design those stormwater management facilities. Does anyone have questions?
I do.
Over here.
Joyce?
First.
Nope.
So when you say that these were adopted in February of 2015, before then, there were different standards that were required by developers?
Yeah. So those were, standards that, and I'm not good on the date on this, it was in 1989.
Alita, we need you to speak into the
Sorry.
microphone.
Yes.
I know you want to look
so
at it, it's hard.
our previous design standards were adopted in 1989, and so that there were we had actually some pretty good standards back then. Actually, the consultant Brown and Caldwell that helped us put together these design standards were actually fairly impressed with our old standards, but the new standards even has higher design criteria for the volume and the rate of discharge, and that overall peak flow
is reduced.
Now, the reason I asked this is because of the Hazel Grove Westling Farms, the Filbert Run Park. When across the street from Filbert Run, a couple of years ago, a bunch of new houses went in, and all of the water, because it's a little bit higher than where the park is, all of the water runoff from those homes now goes through that little stream that goes through Filbert Run Park. A couple weeks ago, William was there in the morning, right after a rain on a Sunday morning, and that stream was running full. It was gushing. It was just crazy. And then 4 hours later, when he took me to show me this stream in the park, there was no water there. So there's an awful lot of runoff coming from that, and that has been a concern of the neighbors, how much that stream through there just seems to be taking all of the runoff water. And so just bringing that up as a concern of since they don't have a representative here of the Hazel Grove Westling Farms Neighborhood Association, and, see what we can do about the runoff that goes through Filbert Run Park.
Okay.
I'm not sure how much response, but that particular development was required to do a downstream enhancement to the pond that's down near what would that be, South End Creek. So there was a fair amount of debate about that in a public forum, about whether or not they should do it on site or whether or not they should enhance the drainage system through their property, and so they did that with a pipe network and then allow it to flow through the park. But then just downstream of the park, there's a big regional facility, I'd call it, and they had to make that bigger. So that was the solution for that particular one. They did have to meet a stormwater standard, but it was definitely something that normally it's required on site of the development. In this case, it wasn't.
Well, looking at the pictures of my dog standing in this river, that a small child could have been swept away by the amount of water going through that park after a heavy rain, and so it seemed to me to be kind of concerning with open water like that going through our park. But I guess the neighbors have to all be aware of it and not let their children go to the park after heavy rain. If we could take a look at that, have somebody go.
What I recall is in this parks master plan, there's a plan to slope that ditch.
So we're gonna.
So slope it back so that it's not as deep and it's not as raging. It's more kind of floodway that fills up and drops down. And we haven't seen the details of that, but in the concepts, I remember seeing some plans for that kind of
I thought we had bridges that went across.
Joyce, would this be a better conversation at the parks?
It could be. It's just that I'm feeling like Hazel Grove Westling Farms doesn't get a lot of representation here. So just you talking about how the water runoff. So it's just gives me something to think about, all of us something to think about, and watching how the water does run in our neighborhoods and where it's going.
Mark?
Because
Sorry.
Yeah, I think the only thing I think I caught on the comment of you use the word impervious surfaces, and I don't think maybe people don't understand what that means to a company coming in and looking at developing a site. When you calculate the stormwater utility or the cost for a new company coming in, and they have 100,000 square foot parking lot, what's the cost on that for their stormwater rebuild? Because I remember when working in the city of Milwaukee, those costs were thousands of dollars. In the GDCs and all, when it comes to a new business coming in, and you said you calculated the cost of stormwater. I was wondering how average on a new business coming in, what does that cost look like in numbers, money?
So So I'm not sure if, are you referring to the calculator that I was referring
Yes,
to?
the
So
calculator.
I'm sorry, the calculator is a sizing calculator. Sizing it wasn't for cost, it's sizing.
Let me rephrase that. The calculation in associating the square foot of impervious surfaces for stormwater, just, calculate. You associate that with a number, do you not, when a new business comes in? Wanting to
Associate,
develop a piece of property?
associate the area, are
Yes.
you referring to?
Yes. That would be an impervious surface, a parking lot. Yeah, exactly. So what are those costs to the businesses? Do you know?
I do not know. You're talking about what the cost of the stormwater facilities on site may be
Right.
with reference to the square foot area
I'll
of
just give you an example
impervious.
for one of the
Yeah,
costs that I remember.
I don't have those numbers.
That I remember is that a company came into Milwaukee and it was almost $10,000 an additional cost for the stormwater because they took a field and they put an asphalt driveway over it. Well, that added to the stormwater sizing, as you said, down the line. That cost, that basically that improvement is passed on to the company. And I don't think a lot of people know that number is fairly huge because stormwater retention around here, or stormwater pervious surfaces, is really an issue with landslides and such. So has that changed at all?
So one thing that, I guess one benefit of for a business coming in and wanting to put in a large parking lot, there's also landscaping requirements. One benefit they do have is they can put in these LID facilities and receive credit for their landscaping, even though they're stormwater landscape plants. They still get the credit for their landscaping as well. So there
Understood.
is a benefit there.
Mark, I would suggest that it's in the thousands, like you said.
Yes, I was
They're
just
very
gonna-
expensive facilities. I mean,
Yes,
if you look
thank
at the
you.
bus barn, for instance, and what they had to build out there, I don't know the numbers, but I bet you they spent maybe near $100,000 on the pond, the grading, and the landscape planting, the under drainage system. You're right; they're not cheap.
What's the monthly charge?
Yes, they have to pay a stormwater fee.
Right, and that stormwater is based on that surface. That's their contribution. It's
That's
not a flat fee.
That's true. That's true.
It's a flat fee based on the size, so
Right.
it's in the thousands.
Yep.
Yes. That
Karen,
was
did
the point.
Oh, sorry, Mark. Karen, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I think I kind of had asked some questions that maybe led to this presentation. And I know this previous winter is not something to base anything on. But is this going to avoid in the future where a new development goes in and may actually force water into a pre-existing development? Will this actually interrupt that flow? That's been one of the issues we've been having, where everybody was fine until the new development went in next door.
So the development stormwater facilities does need to manage that water to a pre-existing condition. The discharge location, whatever the natural discharge location of that site was, that will continue to carry it and convey it to that existing discharge, because we don't want to change drainage basins. But the stormwater should be managed based on these criteria to what that pre-existing discharge was.
And what kind of inspection and enforcement is done?
So as far as the inspection when it's being constructed, we have inspectors that inspect it to make sure that it was constructed to the approved design plans. And then as far as maintenance of those facilities, if it's a public facility like most of the detention ponds, the city maintains those as a public facility, and for private facilities there are maintenance covenants that on a annual basis the city inspects to make sure that they are meeting compliance with that maintenance.
Okay, and
to
if
keep
it
that in.
doesn't do what it was designed to do, what can the city do? That was a lot of do's in one sentence.
So maybe I
Fire the
want to,
engineer.
because where I think you're going with this is one thing I would maybe using this year as an example. As wet as it was this year, we saw very little flooding. Most of our detention ponds and stormwater facilities did what they were supposed to do, and they did that because we didn't see peak kinds of events. Right? We saw rain events that were longer duration. It was really wet. It was raining most of the winter. But those facilities were able to handle that. Now, what our design standards don't require the developer to do is design the facility such that it can handle any kind of storm.
Okay.
Do you remember the size storm that we require them to look at?
They designed to a 10-year storm. So we have, design storms. A 10-year design storm would be about 3.5 inches of rain in 24 hours in Oregon City area. So that's what their design is, to meet that for the rate of flow of the pre-existing condition. They need to meet that.
So there's other storm events that we find that are either at that for more than 24 hours. When we start getting to those levels, those stormwater facilities that were designed to handle something less usually get overtopped, right? And when that happens, everybody is frustrated about that because we have this stormwater solution that's in theory supposed to work, right? But it has its capacity and limitations, just like your transportation network, just like Super Bowl Sunday. Everybody's not all supposed to go flush at the same time because there's capacity issues, right? So that's true for stormwater, and that combined with like this example that was used at the park. While we had good stormwater standards, the majority of that basin that was built years ago, 80s, doesn't have much for stormwater detention. So that's why this one is so flashy and rages, because really there's no stormwater ponds upstream of the park in this particular case. So it's got its flaws. I would say, even though we've had good standards, they're not perfect. These aren't perfect, but they're a lot better. And I guess the other thing is we adopted these just like the city of Wilsonville, Clackamas County, several of the co-permittee cities that all kind of work under the same umbrella. We tried to match something pretty similar. So, but that's not to say, we experienced something up in Park Place last year, which was kind of unusual, and we went through that a fair amount. And yeah, there's some problems there. What happens at that point is a lot harder. Once you got to start tearing out brick and mortar, it's a much more problematic problem. So we're trying not to see much more of that.
That was a very helpful and illustrative answer, John. Thank you, and thank you, Alita.
Gordon, you had a
Sure, I just had a quick question. I might be totally confused with what I'm asking. I had received an email the other day about this new hotel down by the train station asking for a waiver of some sort for their stormwater or something draining into Clackamas Cove. And it seemed like I was like, well, I don't know why, they should get a waiver.
I'm not familiar with the waiver or the request, but all development does need to meet these design standards. So for developments in the floodplain, there is actually criteria to actually convey that as quickly as possible into our waterways, but treating it first. So most of the developments within Main Street area and down in that floodplain area, they would be conveying, they wouldn't be detaining their stormwater. They would be releasing it as quickly into the waterways as possible. But prior to that, it would be treatment. So they will be required. I believe that site is in the floodplain, and they would be required to meet the treatment of those that storm water before it is released.
Oh, okay. I saw the little map. It looked like it just flowed and then just went into Clackamas Cove. And that's another thing I was wondering, is this water dangerous? Because I know, like, right where I saw it pouring at Clackamas Cove is where a lot of people go swimming. Is it dangerous at all? And if it would be dangerous, would you post a sign like, caution, runoff here, dangerous runoff?
The discharge that I think you're referring to was an existing discharge, so that has been receiving those flows, for a very long time. That's an old discharge.
Is it not dangerous though, or is it dangerous, or?
We've not heard of anything. I saw a report on that recently about dangerous or toxic. So because of the landfill being across the street and behind, there's been some long-term monitoring of that, and I was surprised to read toxic. So we sample at that location. I'm pretty sure it's that location that we sample. We also sample down at the Oregon City Shopping Center, and between the two, it's the Oregon City Shopping Centers that's more problematic because of all the parking lot and the road, oils and petroleum. So that's been more problematic, but it's not necessarily, I don't know it to be toxic. It's just, it does have pollution in it.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? All right, thank you, Alita.
Lita, would you mind passing that clicker?
So I'm going to go through these quickly then. Just a reminder, we've talked about this. We had a presentation for you folks, I think. I kind of lose track of my neighborhood meetings, but the 99E Bluff Water Main Replacement Project, you might have noticed them out there on the bluff. They had a crane out there, and we're doing some measurements. That's what these pictures are from, just to make sure we get the pipe the right length. So hopefully they measured twice and we'll cut once. I'm not going to go through these given the time constraints, but we've got a lot of projects in the queue, and there's a couple typos in here too. Sorry about that, but just ask me about any projects, and I can go through any of those that you might be interested in. But there's a lot of work going on in the department right now to try and deliver projects. Other items of interest, I think there was an email that went out about the Drive Safe Oregon City stickers. If the neighborhoods still have them, we've received several back, so thank you for that, for those of you that kept them. If you still have them, we're collecting them. I think we want to use them for National Night Out, maybe the safety fair. So just wanted to remind you about that. This water quality report has mostly got drinking water information in it. You probably got your little postcard in the mail. Did everybody get that? So we've had a lot of concern from the community about wasted paper. We used to mail out a brochure. It was fairly lengthy. So rather than do that, we're just mailing these out. This is online, and it's a nice. I did get one version or one copy of it. So and it has some information on that stormwater management as well. So some of those questions about I think there's some water quality sampling information. So if people are really interested in that, you reach out to, I don't know if Gail's listed in here, but our water quality specialist can give you more specific information on what we found anyway. Thank you, Laura Turway and her group. They submitted a grant application, a Metro Enhancement grant application for I think there was 51 wall caps, right? Is that the number? 51. So if this is along the promenade. They're not very old, but there's several of them, 51 of them, that we think is a result of poor materials. We don't really know. It's questionable. Some look good, some don't look so good. So we're hoping to get a $25,000 grant to help match maybe another $25,000 and replace all those failing wall caps. And then this really is, I think, a pretty cool project. It was the Oregon City Trails Alliance that really sponsored this and brought it to us and said, hey, we want to have a special bicycle rack. And they came up with the design and the manufacturing, the funding. We just got delivery of several of these. 25 of these. So they're it's being stored right now. The city's going to partner with Oregon City Trails Alliance, and we're looking for positive feedback from the community. And we hope to have a variety of them installed. I think, it's our so it's a busy season, so we don't have a specific schedule, but we want to. These were the sites that were included in the grant application.
Yes.
So, and there's some of them have two bike racks on them, others just have one. But just know that's the first location that we're going to pursue. And then there was a secondary list if we could. They weren't sure at the time how many you could have manufactured, right? But we've got 20.
Because of the size of the grant.
Yeah, because of the size of the grant. So there's 25 of them. I think we're going to just keep trudging through those and getting them installed. And I don't know if we're going to replace the ones that we already have out there, but we definitely think that these are much nicer looking, don't you think?
Yes, agreed.
Yeah. And the cone's just there to show you some scale.
So she didn't have a bicycle, right?
Yeah, we didn't. Well,
Because how big's that cone? They don't know how big that cone is.
we should have had a bicycle. That would have been so much smarter. That's it.
All right, any questions for John? I see Dennis down there.
John, South End Road, update, please.
Well, yeah. So South End Road, they're working on today, and they're going to work on through. Sounds like they're hoping for a Thursday morning, but they're not promising a Thursday morning reopening. So the county is essentially digging out about 24 inches deep in several locations along there. We also asked them if they could do some milling and paving up at the top and that internal corner where you kind of come around the corner there. It's pretty rough. And yeah, the idea is to temporarily fix the slide areas with a thick section that they'll put some geosynthetic fabric to help. That kind of helps, and put the right kind of rock in there. So keep in mind, I think we're always going to be, until we have a long-term fix that would include something more like a soldier pile wall. And I've shared with you what soldier pile walls look like from the wall that they're building between the Forest Edge Apartments and the Berry Hill Apartments. So anyway, that's an expensive, very expensive kind of fix. And at this point, they don't really know that's the right fix. They are seeking some grant funding though for that kind of a fix. So maybe we'll see something there. In fact, I know Martin and the county met with federal grant administrator on that project, and they'll definitely be receiving funding for the emergency repair. Question is, will they be able to get money for something along the lines of a soldier pile wall that would kind of fix that thing permanently?
Thank you.
Mark?
Yeah, you said something about the bike, the Oregon Trail Alliance, and the grant. Where did that grant come from?
I think it's wasn't
It
that
was
a
a Metro Enhancement grant.
Enhancement grant? Yeah.
Okay, so it came out of that was so it was approved by Metro through Metro.
Metro
or
sits on the panel, but it's a city commission and some volunteers from the.
How much was it? Because I know
I
Shelley's
think it was-
made a report of it. He got $2,000 for one.
Yeah, no,
Or
I think this was
whatever.
like a $12,000.
No, this was $12,000.
Yeah,
So you've
$12,000
gotten
grant.
2 grants over the last year for this.
No, we've got one.
I only know of this one, Mark, but I
So
can
you
look
got
into
the
that.
one. It wasn't 2,000 on the first grant. It was 12,000
Right.
on the first grant. Okay.
And this is the fulfillment of that grant.
Yeah, I know of no other bike rack grant.
Okay, so who's manufacturing these? Is this local or is this?
You're asking good questions, Mark, that I don't know. Can I get those answers for you?
Yeah, and if you could, do you have a follow-up on that lead question with the school? The schools I asked 2 months ago about, because there was an issue about lead, the schools still using bottled water. I know you're grinning, you've been busy with budgets and stuff like that.
Lead testing at the school. No, don't have an answer for that one.
All right. Those were my questions.
All right, any other questions for John? Thank you. All right, public comments for items not on the agenda. We have two. Did you want to come up at the same time? Absolutely. All right, so we have Bill Daniels and Denise McGriff. Denise's came in first. I would just
We're here for the same thing.
I understand.
We're giving a spiel.
I would just remind you that you each have 3 minutes.
We'd like a little additional time, as I requested to you by email, if we need it, because we're going to. We know there's going to be questions. So
at this point in time, I need to remind you that these are public comments and that we are not going to be asking you questions. These are public comments. If the committee would like to bring it as an agenda item, then we will have comment. But these are just, you guys get to comment.
I can keep mine short. She might use some of my
Hang
time.
on just a second. Mm-hmm. Just to let you know, John, we'd like to see the bike racks replaced at the library with those nice bridge ones that look a lot better than what we got there. Anyway, we're here this evening, Denise McGriff and Bill Daniels. We both live here in the McLaughlin neighborhood, and we wanted to give you an update on the Carnegie Park signage that's been there, gone, and some new signage is there now. So Bill's going to give just a brief overview of sort of the history of those signs.
Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, I see a lot of familiar faces here, but I want to let you know that my name is Bill Daniels, and I've lived in the McLaughlin neighborhood for over 40 years. And so I'm been involved with community input and projects throughout those years. I was the first chair for the McLaughlin Neighborhood Association back in 1995. I'm here to talk about the Carnegie Building and the library, which has been both in terms of a use as a center as well as a library, and Library Park. And I'm talking about the signage primarily, but just for a brief history for those who maybe haven't been here as long in the community, the master planning for the nomination to the Historic Register for the Carnegie Building began back in the mid-90s, 1995. And in that nomination, we also had a master plan along with the City of Oregon City for a restoration/renovation of the building, earthquake-proof and many other utilitarian reasons, heating, air conditioning, all of those reasons. And at that time, the library moved up to the hilltop in 1995 on a temporary lease with the Danielsons. So in that time, the work went on, the work being the master planning and then the actual construction. And in 2001, that was completed, and it reopened as a Carnegie Center. The library remained at the hilltop, looking for a temporary home. They knew they needed a larger facility. But in 2010, they, of course, lost their lease and had to move back down to the Carnegie Building. But in that meantime, in 2001, through community involvement, a number of people decided that they would like to volunteer to donate money for 2 signs for that facility, one being on the corner of 7th and John Adams, and the other for the Library Park on the corner of 6th and John Adams to replace an old sign there near the wading pool. So in that time, we had we found the artist to do the construction in gold leaf, wood signage with metal bracketing, meant to last a long time, which it did. And it seemed that those signs were meant to stay there for some time. And in the meantime, of course, the addition to the library began on the current site, and those signs were removed. And that's where I wanted to turn this over to Denise, if I could.
Many of you know that the community was very much involved in the construction, parts, and design of the new addition to the Carnegie Building. One of the things that we brought up during our review of that particular project was the fact that we wanted to see the signage integrated, not only for the building itself, but any of the furnishings and things that went along with it, that it would be consistent with the historic nature of the park. As Bill said, that unfortunately it was not part of the design review. It was part of the design review package, but it was not included in the design review package. But we again had been working with staff. Unbeknownst to us, there was a unfortunate miscommunication, and both signs were removed just before Phil Lewis got here. We sought to inquire as to what happened to them, since again they were both raised, money for them were raised by the community, not just the McLaughlin neighborhoods. It was a community effort. They seem to have mysteriously disappeared from the contractor as well. So the Carnegie Library sign, park sign, is gone, and the large one that was on the corner is also gone and was replaced by something that's very, very modern. We expressed our concern to Phil and to Maureen. Maureen is now working with us on that. We wanted to make sure that you all knew that there was going to be a process and a plan to look at re-signing both those corners with something a little more historically oriented, hopefully wood carved. We again will be hopefully embarking on a new fundraising campaign to try to replace the signs. To be honest with you, I think it was an oversight by several staff that the signs just appeared. And as a matter of fact, the day that the new one was put up, I was having coffee with Martin Montalvo, and he looked over and went, "Wow, when did that get there?" And we both saw it at the same time. But we don't know if any of you are interested in participating. We're going to be, as I said again, working with Phil, working with the Parks Committee, and we want to work with someone from the library board. We'll be going to see them sometime later on this month to talk to them about that and just make it more of a community process. Again, Maureen is totally on board, and we've been keeping Phil updated as to where we are on this as well. But we wanted to let you all know that this is something that's in the works, and if anybody's interested in participating in that process with us, just to let me know. And we haven't set up any meetings or anything of that sort yet, but we will be shortly. So that is basically our information, and I can tell you there are several city staff people who are really sorry about those signs disappearing.
Yeah, they were beautiful.
I know. They were hand, for those of you who didn't ever see them, they were hand carved. I mean, they were absolutely gorgeous.
Thank you, Denise.
So-
So yeah, if anyone wants to
Yeah.
or talk to their neighborhood or knows that, get a hold of Denise.
Yeah,
That's
we're not
great.
going to make it a big committee. It's going to be small, but we want to make sure that we involve people. And of course, there'll be a process to unveil whatever comes up with and the ideas and all of that. So anyway, thank you for
Thank you.
having us come. And
Thanks for the history.
Appreciate it. For sure, me.
Bill was on this CIC when I very, very first came.
A while back.
Yep.
Yep. He's been here
Not
7
too
months.
long.
All right, thank you.
Okay. We had a executive meeting and we met with Christina, and one of the things that we've found over the years, it seems like, per point exactly Mark made, he had asked a question that hadn't been answered, and so that was a concern, that sometimes things get brought up at the meeting and then it kind of dies. Maybe it's not they didn't realize, people forget or whatever. So one of the things that we're going to be trying to do is throughout the meeting, taking note of any requests that have been made that then Christina will follow up with and get answers to, and we will have an agenda item that she can then report back, so that we have a return and report back, so that we get the answers to the questions. Sometimes, that way she could just follow up with John and say, hey, remember that question, which is a great.
Yeah, and some of them I may be emailing out to the group during the month, and I think the goal is I'll report back the answers and how they've been answered from the previous month, either from a previous email to the group or at the meeting.
Right. If it's something that would be more timely, she can just send out an email. And just to remind ourselves that we can't have discussions via email. So if she sends out an email and you have a question, you can reply to her, but don't reply all, because we can't have a but
the answer.
So we will. She will then give a summary of what maybe emails she sent out during the month, but that way we at least get an answer quicker in the meantime. If you have a meeting coming up that you wanted to share it with, and then we'll also, so that it's public knowledge, answer it.
And I think the idea is at the roundtable at the end of the meeting, Chair Wilhite will kind of recap the questions, so I can confirm that they're the same ones I have as well.
Let me just clarify. You're saying that if anybody has a question, not to just to reply to Christina and not to share that question with anybody else. I'm curious in why.
We can't have discussions
But
without
you
it
can
being
forward
in-
your question to everybody.
Yes,
Okay.
but we can't have a discussion.
You
Yes,
can't
sorry.
have
If it was
a
just a
open-
question that you wanted answered, yes.
You can have a discussion on, any place else, but the fact of the matter is that you can share your questions with everybody else.
Right, we just
Okay.
can't have you ask a question and then somebody answers that question and asks a different question and then somebody else answers a question.
Again, that goes
would be a
back to my
discussion.
statement before. If they do that, then they don't know the rules.
That's why I'm reminding.
Yeah.
So
We all forget, we all forget.
So I'm really relying at the end of the meeting to know the questions that are being asked of me.
Right.
I think everybody else would like to know what everybody else is asking too.
Well, and part of this too, and this is to Tony and Brian, this is from too many years of city commission meetings where a question comes up during public comments. And I trust that staff answers that individual's question at some point, but when I watch the next meeting, I don't hear the answer. So things have come up at these meetings. We do have at least 3 people that watch these meetings on video. And so to not leave them in suspense, this is a way to have us get members' questions answered, but also to have on the video what the answer to that question was for our adoring viewing public.
Right. And there aren't always a lot, but it's just nice
You got a
to.
question, man. You ask it.
Okay. Move on to work items. So we sent around the sign up. Thank you. If some of you needed to check your calendars, because this doesn't look like everyone has been able to sign up, please remember to do that. I was going to ask if there would be a volunteer for each of these 2 events to be the coordinator, to help coordinate timing so that not everyone has to stay the whole time. There's not really enough to do the whole time for the whole night or the whole day. You only need usually 2 to 3 people there. 3's great, so that you can be talking to the public and answering questions. So is there anyone who would be willing to volunteer? It would be to coordinate times and then making sure our supplies get there from, doesn't mean you have to pick them up yourself, you could delegate, but you'd just be the coordinator. So is there anyone who'd be willing to do that for neighborhood night out? Roy or Joyce or Barbara or Karen or Shelley or Vern that signed up?
Who's not here?
I'm not going to volunteer people.
You said that's the National Night Out one, August 1st?
Yes. I will be out of town, so I can't do it either. I can't do it. I'll be in Arizona.
To make sure that the canopy and the signs get
We'll
there?
coordinate with John. The Oregon Public Works wants to join us like they did last time. Last time was great. They were willing to bring the table and the chairs and the pop-up, and so it would just be a matter of making sure that we're on the same page, that that's what comes. And then there's usually handouts that Christine will be able to get us that like those on the back table that go, and then little goodies to hand out. You know, sometimes we have pens and then just to make sure that it's staffed so that everybody that signs up knows when they're coming and going.
Okay.
Would you be willing to do that, Joyce? Or were you just asking a question?
Buy it as a volunteer.
While she's mulling that over, how about for the safety fair? Is anyone willing to do that for the safety fair? All right, I'll take that one. So National Night Out, is that something you could do, Joyce?
Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
not the safety fair.
Correct, I'll do the safety fair. Okay. Next, creating an ad hoc subcommittee for outstanding work plan item, which was goal number 3, develop resources to help maintain active neighborhood associations and help reactivate inactive neighborhood associations. At the last meeting, that was a question that Christina brought up, and we all kind of deer in the headlight. I don't know if you got any responses to that, no. So we felt that maybe it would be a good idea to create an ad hoc subcommittee like was created to come up with the Public involvement, thank you, Jesse. So we are asking for volunteers, to people that would be willing to sit in on a committee to help us do goal 3. And some of that will be reviewed, just looking through the public involvement plan, picking out what was said and determining if that's enough, determining if we need to do more. So it shouldn't be, it's not, hoping not to recreate the wheel. Mark?
Yeah, I think if you're going to get somebody to do this, we need to look at, I mean, first of all, I vote to get rid of ad hoc. Second of all, is that what's the scope on this? What's our end result? Because we definitely have some issues, some gaps, some mechanics in our processes that are creating some problems, some questions. So when you say maintain active neighborhood associations, blah blah, I mean, is that all this is going to do?
Yeah, it's just coming up with, we set as a CIC some goals, and one of our goals was to have some resources available if a neighborhood was struggling, that it would give them ideas or tools that they could use to help keep active, or if it went inactive, what happens next when it's inactive? So it's that the scope of this committee is just, I would imagine it wouldn't take more than 2 or 3 meetings.
Well, see, the thing is that I have a question about the whole relationship between the memo that Laura had given us, saying that the neighborhood association isn't part of the city, but the CIC is.
Okay.
So again, if I can finish my question,
No.
is that I'm having a problem with one body, this committee, regulating what a neighborhood association does and vice versa because of the mechanics.
It's not regulating, it's just coming up with ideas that individual neighborhood association could then use.
So provide me, it's not, and I agree with you, it's not, but it's the right to give the suggestion. I'm having problems with the mechanic for the right of the CIC to do anything with the neighborhood association, since the letter from Laura basically said the neighborhood association has nothing to do with the city. So I'm having problems with the mechanics of it.
I hear you.
Finally.
I hear your question. I hear your concern. I'm
No,
still
it's
going to
not a
ask for a
concern.
committee.
There's a definite procedure issue here.
I hear your concern. Is there anyone willing to be on the committee to come up with ideas?
I know if I'm on it, nobody else will be on it, so.
No one's willing?
What are
This
the
is a goal that we set.
requirements? Like, or is it meeting once a week or something? Or
When we did the,
Every other week.
that would be up to the committee. I mean, if we just had 3 or 4 people willing to meet, we met when we did the actual public involvement plan, we met at the planning departments in their room, and I'm sure that would be probably a good place to meet. And we just said, okay, we talked amongst ourselves and determined how often we wanted to meet, if you want it to last 2 or 3 months. I mean, I would like this, it would be great, since we set the goal, to be able to have it by the end of the year, but it would be nice if we didn't have to drag it out that long either. But it's kind of going to be up to the committee. I'd like to determine how often they meet. But no, it's not going to be every week. If you wanted to just meet once a month, that would be fine too.
sure, I'll be on it.
Okay. As the chair, I automatically, I don't remember what the term is, but I'll be there.
You're stuck.
Yeah, I have to go. All right.
Thank you, Gordon.
Gordon, who else is willing?
I'll be on it with Gordon.
Okay. If anyone else that isn't here tonight or is here that decides that they would like to, please let me know, and we'll work out what time and when we would like to get started meeting.
Okay, so you'll send us an email or something?
We can talk after the meeting tonight, or I can send an email.
Okay, thank
Figure
you.
out what's the best way to. I'll talk to Christina about how that should work. Okay, next item on the agenda is the grievance committee report. Because Karen and I were named in the grievance, and because Mark was part of the grievance, we've been asked to recuse ourselves. So at this time, Karen and I will recuse ourselves, and that's up to Mark if he will recuse himself. And we will turn it over to Barbara to run this agenda item.
Okay, so, you're going to stay?
Yes, ma'am, I would like to, the reason, I do not agree that Amy and Karen should recuse themselves at this point. I think it's over with. I don't think that there's anything there needs to be. So that is the reason why I'm not going to step and recuse myself from this process. So I just wanted to make that clear, that I don't believe that they should be excluded from this process. So I think they have some value in the process, so it's up to you.
What do you think, Mark or Mike?
I think that's more a question. That's a staff question.
Yeah.
Well, the grievance process, we've laid out kind of a normal public hearing, which usually at the beginning you do identify conflict of interest, any ex-parte contests, and any members who ask to be recused. Once again, the grievance committee is a non-binding recommendation. I'm looking to my other two staff, but right now that's just our normal process. And so at this point, Mr. Matheson has said he does not want to recuse himself, and I'll leave it to the rest of the CIC to determine if someone wants to challenge that.
So, just so I understand, there is going to be a public comment section, but only on items that have already been introduced.
Correct, on the record of the grievance.
Okay.
Okay, so I will ask Mike for the report that as a result of the grievance team meeting.
Okay, you each should have a copy of the findings and recommendations from the grievance committee. I'm not going to read this because you all have it. I would point out one thing. You'll notice about halfway down the page there's a line across the page. We actually did this as two separate motions. A motion on the top half of the page and another on the bottom half of the page. The top half of the page are the actual findings and the non-binding recommendation from the grievance committee. That was really what we were charged to do. The information at the bottom of the page are simply suggestions of additional work items that we think the CIC should consider that might help alleviate this kind of a situation from occurring again, and that might help any future grievance committee. So that being said, basically the findings and recommendations of the grievance committee, and again they're non-binding. The first point there lays out the applicable section of the municipal code, and the important point that we felt was that that the grievance committee is to study and recommend on grievances for any person that considers themselves adversely affected by the CIC, and those are the operative words in this case. And what we found in the information that we were presented was that the social media postings that were at the essence of this grievance were the postings of private individuals, and those individuals did not represent themselves as officers or members of the CIC, and they did not suggest or state that their opinions were those of the CIC. And so therefore, it was our finding that Miranda Sierra was not harmed by an action of the CIC, and our non-binding recommendation to the CIC is to dismiss this grievance. So that's the report from the grievance committee. Again, it's non-binding. You'll notice that 4 of the members of the grievance committee signed. Georgia was not present tonight to sign. She was at one of our 2 meetings prior to tonight and was not present tonight, so that's why she did not sign.
And Mike, just real quickly, just for process sake, it would be helpful if the CIC was able to go around the room and identify each person if there is any conflict of interest, ex parte contact, or members asking to be recused. And if anybody in the CIC wants to make comment on Mr. Matheson's recusal, Mr. Matheson not wanting to be recused from this. And so if we could start with you, Mike, and go around if each person wants to identify any conflict of interest, ex parte contact, or confirming that you do or do not want to be recused from this.
The last one, sorry?
Or if you do or do not want to be recused from the...
Okay. I have no conflict of interest. I had no ex parte contacts. Obviously the committee meetings, but that's the record. And I'm not asking to be recused.
Oh, yeah, and the final was if anybody wants to challenge Mr. Matheson's request.
Right. No, I'm not going to challenge that.
Okay, I don't have any anything to report, and I have not any interest. I would also not deny Mr. Matheson to sit here and listen.
I was referred to repeatedly in the initial documentation, so I would rather recuse myself.
Can you hear me? Looks like it's on. Okay. Ex parte contact. I talked to Gordon Wilson just before this meeting tonight, 5 minutes before 7 o'clock. Just asked what happened at the grievance committee meeting, and he showed me the copy that we now have in front of us. That's it. I don't think I should be recused, but I do think Mark should be. So I will challenge that failure to recuse, only because I think you may not understand that there's going to be a vote of this panel up here on the recommendation of the grievance committee. So
is that a question to me?
No, it wasn't a question. It's
okay.
It's a challenge to your failure to recuse yourself. You were very intimately involved in the grievance. Named throughout, you purported to represent the grievant. So I think it would be very inappropriate for you to vote on the issue. That said, it's a non-binding recommendation, so ultimately, not sure what the harm is, but that's it.
To Jesse's comment, it seems there's been, again, some confusion in the fact that if I don't recuse myself of this process, that I would ultimately vote. And he is right. It would be inappropriate. And I will not be voting on this matter. But I believe that, as I stated earlier, Amy and Karen have had their say. They've asked to be heard, and they've also had made the statement that they felt that they're being, well, and actually reinforced by Jesse, that their First Amendment rights are being infringed upon. So I don't think, and as Jesse said, these are non-binding. So therefore, I believe that Karen and Amy should have a chance at the mic. They don't have to vote. We all know that. So I don't understand what the confusion is, but those are my comments. I will not be voting, but I do believe that I'm here to answer any questions this panel may have in regard to the decision in front of us.
I have not had any contact with anyone on anything, and don't have any problem with him staying here.
No conflict of interest.
I don't have any conflict of interest. I've been on some weird email chains, but I can't really understand what most of them are talking about. So I didn't really read. I couldn't follow anything, so I don't think I, have any conflict of interest.
No conflict of interest.
No conflict of interest.
No conflict.
No conflict of interest.
Okay, back to me. Okay, so then, are we open to public comments now? Okay. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to make a public comment? Okay. So next we are to discuss this, either adopt or refine the grievance committee report. Does anyone have a problem adopting it? And so everyone is, or to refine it? Okay, then can I have a motion that we can pass the grievance report as presented?
I move that we adopt the grievance report as presented.
Okay,
I'll second.
Joyce, thank you. Do we need to take a private vote, or can we just take a show?
Well, in this situation, each neighborhood association does have a primary voter. So I think on your
Oh,
dais,
that's right, yeah.
each
Sorry.
neighborhood association has one vote if there's available vote for that.
Now, you recused yourself, Shelley. Okay. Dennis, yes or no?
Yes.
Mike?
There's nothing, serving on the grievance committee is not
No, you can
eliminating
vote.
right to vote? Okay. Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jesse?
Yes.
Barbara, yes. Bill McConnell?
Yes.
Vern Johnson?
Yes.
Okay. We have 7 yeses and no nos, so. Motion.
Scratching my head, sorry.
Did you get to vote? I'm with Jesse. He's our vote.
Was Kenema on there?
Yes.
Yeah, Dennis. So the motion passes. So the CIC grievance recommendation is a non-binding and final unless called up by the city commission. So that's it. Correct?
As staff, I will forward it to all people involved in the
Okay.
grievance.
Barbara? Can I have the record show that there was one vote to keep me from speak Jesse's vote versus everybody else, because I don't think the other people had their vote on whether to. We kind of skipped over that, so nobody objected for me to stay on except for Jesse. Is that correct or not? Because I don't think the vote was completed.
My understanding of that was that you had said that you were not going to vote. And so if you're not going to vote, I didn't say anything as we went through there because when it was your turn, you came through and said that you were not going to vote in this matter. So.
But I believe the motion or the vote wasn't being altered. It still should have been completed.
Well, we had our opportunity to do so. I did not vote for what you had said what you were going to do, and I think
So what would in that particular case, what would the record show?
I think the record shows here that I've made it clear that should we adopt or refine the grievance committee, and everybody voted to adopt it, they didn't need to change anything.
No, but we're talking about people objecting for me to be on the panel itself. That was also included, was it not?
I don't believe so.
No, it was noted at the minutes.
Okay. So then why ask the question again? I'm really
Which
confused in the
question?
sense of that we started with the question and it came to Jesse and then I made my statement and then nobody else was followed up on that particular item. Why?
We didn't vote on that item. That was just a discussion.
Probably, just because of your statement that you weren't going to vote, everybody felt comfortable having you stay.
Well,
Yeah.
okay, well,
So-
again, it would be nice to understand that. I don't think it was really clear that the actual issue stopped here, so. That's all.
Point taken.
Thanks.
The declarations will be noted in the minutes.
Okay. Okay, so since we've voted and the grievance is accepted, or the grievance recommendation is accepted, I turn the meeting back over to Amy.
Thank you, Barbara. The next item on the agenda will be the approval or not of the minutes. Did anybody have any, look over the minutes and have any corrections or changes?
One at a time. One at a time.
Oh, there's two,
Yeah.
April 3rd and May 1st. So we'll do April 3rd. Did anybody have any changes or corrections to April 3rd?
I move that we approve the April 3rd minutes.
All right, all in favor, may you raise your hand on this one? All right. And for the May 1st, any corrections or additions?
I move we approve the May 1st minutes.
I'll second it.
All right, all in favor, raise your hand. Okay. Seeing no, on either of those, were there any abstains or or nays? I thought it was unanimous, but okay, those both approved unanimously. Next on our agenda is roundtable. And we'll start with Roy.
Okay, Hillendale, we have our steering committee meeting tomorrow night at the excuse me, Live and Hope Church at 7 p.m. There will be a presentation on not an addition, but what's it called, Joyce?
28 lot subdivision that will be on Leland Road.
Yeah, would they join the city?
Right, it's going to be an annexation.
That's the word I was
and
thinking of.
So it's changing from county zoning to city zoning, and 28 new houses on Leland Road. So this is an open meeting for anybody that would like to come and look at these plans and make comment. It's the developer's presentation to Hillendale Neighborhood Association, but it actually borders Tower Vista, and it's actually it borders also Hazel Grove Westling Farms. If you have the brochure that you pick up back here, the area in question is right at the southwest corner of Hillendale neighborhood, where there's a little open spot there where the junction is with Tower Vista and Hazel Grove Westling Farms.
And that's tomorrow night at 7, Living Hope Church. And then our July, which is our normal general meeting, is being moved to the 11th because the 4th would be our normal meeting. And that is going to be at Hillendale Park, where we have kind of a neighborhood get-together on that.
And pickleball.
And pickleball.
The only other thing good for the city, good for the order, this coming Saturday on the 10th is also the Rose Festival Parade, and some of us will be participating in that, representing the city of Oregon City, and our Heritage Days, which will be June 23rd and 24th, where the museums in town will be free. There will be shuttle buses running between the locations. We are still in need of more volunteers, so if you would like to volunteer to talk to people either at the cemetery or any of the museums, or ride those shuttle buses and be a guide, please talk to me after the meeting today.
Okay. Commissioner?
So the Oregon City Homeless Solutions Coalition is still gathering steam. I think we're up to 84 members now.
Wow.
A lot of people interested in this, and so we're going to have something to show here pretty soon. We've already got our bylaws and everything kind of set up for that, so now we can start making some physical things on there. So our Oregon City Library, the Daily Journal of Commerce, which is kind of what all the business people use in the state for kind of a expose of all the work that's going on in the area. they do an awards each year for their projects, and that could, it's residential, multifamily, and landscaping and public buildings.
What are you playing with? A little distraction there.
You know, I'm sorry, it wasn't the community development building. You know, it's the library. Okay, sure. God. Anyway, the library got second place for the municipal building, public building in their category, which is quite a deal. The transportation building was also nominated, but it didn't get an award, but our library did. So we have to congratulate the Scott Edwards Architecture and PC Construction for that. So lastly, and I got here a few minutes late, I don't know if we talked about the Riverwalk unveiling on Saturday.
Not yet.
Well, so there was the unveiling of the Riverwalk, you know, and then, I don't know if anybody went out into the courtyard area there, and as I was standing there having a nice little pastry and some coffee, next to the fence of the pathway, along came the unveiling of the naked bike riders. So I'm not sure if that was part of the program. I'd like to express my gratitude to Metro for that. Anyway, that's all I got.
Top that, Tony. Tony, can you top that?
I can't. Nope, I'm gonna try.
It was him.
I wasn't biking.
Oh, okay.
I was.
Yeah.
All right. Christina?
Just for people who did not go to the event but want to see the Riverwalk designs, they're on the website. We have a new email address, web address. It's Willamette Falls Legacy Project, but rediscoverthefalls.com works as well. And there's also going to be a Planning Commission, City Commission joint work session next week. And so if you want to log in and watch it from your computers, you could, or later come back, you can kind of get the debrief and next steps of moving forward, how the process to build phase 1.
Okay. John?
So I don't have anything new, but I wanted to answer a couple questions so they wouldn't have to remain on your list. And, Mark asked a couple of questions, and I just wanted to I sent a text to Wes Rogers from the school district, who referred me to their website, and I went and looked at it real quick. There's way more information there on water testing than I could report. So I'm just going to refer you to www.ocsd62.org, and there's you scroll down, at least on my phone, there's a faucet, and it's got test results, PDF examples of test results. Sounds like they did a lot of testing, but I'm going to let you do your own interpretation of that. Okay? And then I checked on the bike racks, and they were not manufactured locally. They were manufactured from a company by the name of Dero, D-E-R-O, all capitals, and they're out of Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Really? All the way out from there, huh? Wow.
Looks like they do a lot of bike racks at that company from their website. So,
well, thank you.
So those are two things that I don't have to get back to you on, and you don't have to put on your list.
Thank you, I crossed them off the list for you, Christina.
They're on your list, Christina.
I'll come up with a couple
All right,
more.
Mike?
I don't really have anything to report. I went to the event on Saturday, and it sounds like I left too early.
Or you weren't in the right place. I mean, you were in the wrong place.
Yeah, okay. That was the masked guy that rode by.
All right, Barbara.
The Park Place neighborhood met in May with a general meeting, was very well attended at the Alliance Academy. A guest speaker from the Water Board, Rita Baker. That was very interesting. And we'll have a steering committee meeting on June 21st, and we have 4 new members that want to be involved in the steering committee, so we're very excited about that. So a couple of us will be retiring. I also attended the OMSI, but I didn't see that either. I came to the second presentation. So that's about it.
All right. For Gaffney Lane, I mentioned last month, but we are decided to have meetings on the second Thursday of every other month starting in July. So July 13th will be our first meeting that we'll have every other month. And we have decided to order a sign that we will be able, one of the A-frame plastic signs that says meeting tonight, Gaffney Lane or something like that, that we'll set out on the curb at the Garden Meadows where we meet, so that the people that own it are gracious enough, they'll store it for us and set it out that day to remind people driving by, and when people come to be able to see that. Which reminds me, this is June. June is the last month. Check your remind your chairs to check their spreadsheets, or get a hold of Katie and see where you're at with your budget if there's funds expire at the end of June. So it's one of those use them or lose them for that. So that's for Gaffney Lane. As far as the CIC, we have in the back, and we've done this ever since I've been a member of the CIC, we have sign-in sheets. We used to take the names from the sign-in sheets and add them to our minutes so that we kept a record of who was here in the audience as well as the members of the CIC. But it's been brought to our attention that no other boards or commissions do that, so I wanted to ask you, and Barbara has not, Barbara has not been including those in our minutes. We have the sign-in sheet that as public record, but she hasn't been actually adding it to the official minutes. So I wanted to ask you as CIC members if you feel we should continue to have a sign-in sheet or not. Follow along with the other.
I say no, we have the record. We take roll call.
Is that pretty much, anybody have an objection to that? Let that go?
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Okay, great. All right, Christina, cross that off your list. Don't need to do a sign-in sheet. I would ask if anyone doesn't have a placard. Roy, I'm going to put that on here right now. Roy placard. That'll be on Christina's list. And to double, did anybody have trouble signing in that's up here?
Yes.
Here.
Okay.
I'm not on the list.
All
He
right.
signed in, then he killed the monitors.
So I will add that to the list to make sure that all current members are on the computer.
Oh, by that I just meant I couldn't get the monitor to turn
couldn't
on.
get the monitor to
Oh,
turn it on.
You're
Oh,
on the
so
list,
you don't know if
though,
your name's on there or not?
Right.
Got it. Okay.
It is.
Okay. So we have monitor issues. And then separate of
Actually,
the
that's probably me.
Okay, great. And then also, as I sit in on the monthly meeting that's held for the Community Development Stakeholders Group. We meet on the first Thursday of the month at the Planning Commission in their nice little conference room. And there's members of architects in the area, developers, public works. What's that department called? That Wendy's part of. Development Services, thank you. Wendy Marshall comes from that, and Mike Roberts comes from the building, and Laura is there from the Planning Commission, and their goal is to get the community's input on things then ways they can make it better. We've been talking about, there's been a lot of talk about subdivisions, so not a lot this last month on single family homes, and I apologize that I didn't bring my minutes from that to update you if there was anything. So if you have any questions, or if you want me to ask any questions, feel free to give them to me throughout the month. Anything on building or developing. We did talk about and got a list of the 6 approved marijuana vendors that are then waiting for OLCC clearance. That was very helpful because I've had a lot of questions about that. So that was something that I found. So that is what I have. Now at the end, I'll see if there's any.
Gordon.
And then I'll go over the things. Okay, Gordon.
Is there any kind of rule on how far away from like parks and schools and stuff like that?
Yeah, there are. I don't know them offhand, but I know that they're online, and there is a stringent. There's guidelines of how far they can be from that, how far they can be from each other. There's a whole so they have to meet all that criteria before getting approval from the city, and then they also have to be approved by the OLCC.
And that's all on the city website?
Okay.
Tony's shaking his head yes. So.
Yeah.
We can provide a link.
Okay.
Are you done?
Karen? Yes.
Okay, Rivercrest next meeting will be Thursday, June 15th. Laura will be there to talk about their move. Wes is doing a presentation about some changes at Gardner Middle School. We've asked the park department to come. We've had escalating problems at Rivercrest Park, and we're now having trouble with the kids that gather at the top of Waterboard. When they're chased out, they come over to Rivercrest. So we're going to be having some discussions as to things that we can do to make the park less attractive, maybe, to all of them. And for once, we don't have John because the agenda was full. Oh, yeah, and Tony's coming.
When is it?
Oh, yeah.
So, John, you get to stay home for one Rivercrest meeting.
Sorry.
No, and the second Tuesday in August is our annual dessert potluck. We raise money every year at our flower sale. We use that money to buy hot dogs, buns, chips, drinks, relishes and things, and everybody brings a dessert to share, and that's at Rivercrest Park at 5:30 on must be the 8th, because it's the second Tuesday, the Tuesday after National Night Out.
I've had a number of requests about some issues on Partlow, and I was having trouble on the website determining which neighborhood that is in. Is that in anyone's neighborhood here? Is that Tower Vista or is it Westling Farms?
Westling Farms.
Okay.
Partlow is a borderline on Tower Vista.
Is that okay? Maybe I'll talk to you afterwards about that then. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Berkeley Hills Neighborhood Association's next meeting is July 11th, and we're meeting at Holmes House at Rose Farm. So the presentation is going to be by the docents from the farm, and they will be doing tours in advance of our 7 o'clock meeting if anybody's not playing pickleball and wants to come. Beyond that, we have not turned in our stickers to you yet because they lived in someone's house for longer than they should have, and we're just now getting them out to
mine.
people of our neighborhoods. It wasn't Mark's fault, I swear.
For once.
So those will be available again on July 11th, and then we'll get them to you after that before the National Night Out. John, if I can have 5 minutes of your time when this is over, I have a Berkeley Hills neighborhood issue that I need to talk to you about outside of this. And separate from Berkeley Hills, June 22nd is the Best of Oregon City Gala Award Ceremony at Abernathy Center. So go out to bestoforegoncity.org and get your tickets now. It's going to be a really, really fun celebration. And for any of you who missed the Naked Bike Riders on Saturday, the World Naked Bike Ride is on June 24th this year, and we are still looking for volunteers if you want to come. And volunteers get to keep their clothes on. So.
That's okay.
Jesse?
Thank you, Shelby. The McLaughlin Neighborhood Association had their last general meeting on May 4th. We had a report from our police liaison, Detective Justin Young, which is normal for us. But what was new for us is we got to meet Officer Michael Day, who's the upcoming homeless liaison officer. And as I understand it, he's going to be dedicated to that job throughout the city. And that's really exciting.
Wow.
So the way he described it, there's not going to be any one-size-fits-all approach to homeless members of our community, but he will actually work individually and directly with individuals. I think he's set to start in July, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. We also heard a safety and life-saving information update from Clackamas Fire District Number 1. That's always good. And City Manager Tony Kalkol gave us a presentation about the adopted 2017 through 2019 goals and explained the budget and budget cycle. Also, sorry, this is the last thing from last meeting. We submitted a letter of support for the Latourette Park update. Most of you probably know the Girl Scouts are working with other groups and the city to develop, I think, ultimately a new master plan for that site, so that's exciting. Also, kind of big news for our neighborhood is a lot of you know that earlier this year it was discovered that the two Camp Adair buildings at the south end of John Adams Street were 1942 buildings from Camp Adair used as officers' clubs. So the neighborhood association submitted a historic landmarks application designation form to the city. Unfortunately, that hasn't come to a hearing, and we're actually asking the Land Use Board of Appeals to give us a hearing on that. So that's big news for us. Upcoming general meeting is July 6th. I'm not sure if that'll be at the library or at the fire station, but I believe our primary presenter is the transportation consultant for the Riverwalk and Legacy Project Parking and Transportation Plan. And is it Rick Williams? Yes, I think he'll be there. So if anyone hasn't been able to come to the transportation summits here, you can come and ask him questions at our general meeting. Also of general interest, the Neighborhood Association just found out a few days ago that there's going to be a major Netflix film shooting in our neighborhood this July and maybe through August. We don't know what it's called, other than it's set in the 1990s in Boring, Oregon. So
They're filming it here.
So stay tuned.
Mark?
Okay. I don't have much on the Berkeley Hills, but I want to ask a question. What's the reason why the agenda item not on the agenda item? I mean, we usually have a time where we can speak when there's something on the agenda, when there's nothing on the agenda. There's an item that we can talk about when we have nothing. An unlisted agenda item, I'm sorry.
Item number 3, public comments on items not on the agenda. Is that what you're talking about?
Okay. Second of all, Bob LaSalle mentioned about the $5,000 that was added to. There was an email that came out. Pardon, Karen? What did you say?
I believe it's next year's budget that was referred
to. Is
to.
that next year's budget? How is that going to be allocated?
Don't know. I haven't seen any
about
numbers.
Okay.
We'll get it. We'll get it as when it comes out.
All right. That's no problem. All right. I was just asking.
Okay. Haven't seen that. Bill?
So we, South End Neighborhood Association had our meeting in May, our May 19th or 18th, whenever it was, whatever the third Thursday was. And our agenda sounds like it was a lot like the McLaughlin Neighborhood Association. And thanks again to Tony for coming and speaking. And our next meeting will be the third Thursday in August.
Tower Vista Neighborhood, or not, Neighborhood Steering Committee will meet tomorrow night, 7 o'clock, New Hope Church, same as Roy.
Great. Gordon?
The only thing I can think of to add is the McLaughlin Neighborhood Association will be offering healthy, natural snow cones at the concerts in the park this summer, so stop by and try a healthy snow cone.
Healthy. Is that an oxymoron? Dennis?
Yes. Kanema, we have our meeting coming up June 15th. The other thing that I can impart is the bringing something that's good that's coming out of Kanema. I've been emailed and have had conversations with a number of neighbors, and as a result of our delightful thing of having the bylaws passed, was terrific in terms of like all the dedicated work by a lot of people over 3 years, and we're all pleased about that, but more so for the neighborhood. And what I've gotten back from a number of neighbors is the fact that they're more enthusiastic, they're happy, that maybe we'll become more identified with less dysfunction and a little bit more contributive part to the city on a whole. And we have a number of people already within our neighborhood who have volunteered to create a whole series of things that seem to be very promising and positive. And I would like to express to this body that I'd like to become a part of that in the CIC, that Kanema is a positive contributor as opposed to a dysfunctional neighborhood. Thank you.
So noted. Yay. Linda? All right. So, just Joyce?
Jesse reminded me, because you guys did ask me to be your representative on the parking study for the falls.
Oh.
And so I have been attending those. I've gone to both those meetings. And just a quick report is, when we broke out into small groups, the group I ended up with had quite a few McLaughlin neighbors in it. And when we were trying to prioritize when things needed to happen, we kept wanting to put them, a lot of things, at the top, at the beginning. And they were saying, no, this is going to be for when this opens in, 2022 or whatever. And we said, no, some of these parking issues need to be done now, especially in the McLaughlin neighborhood for the parking passes for the neighbors that live near the elevator, because there's a lot of downtown workers that park in their neighborhood and take the elevator down. And so trying to get the discussion going that some of these parking issues shouldn't wait until later. So that was the big thing that came out of the discussion, and I'm looking forward to having that final meeting coming up later on this month.
Great. So to end off, I'll give the list to Christina that I have. If I've missed something, then let me know. We need to update the website to reflect that our September meeting is canceled. We need to update this flyer here to show that Gaffney Lane's meetings are changed, and any other places that needs to happen, especially before we hand them out at National Night Out. Roy needs a placard, and checking with GIS to see if we can figure out the monitors to get them to be working on this end of the dais, and make sure that all of the CIC members are on the computer so that if they sit up here, they can log in.
And then I can also send a marijuana regulation link. out.
Yes. Okay. Is there anything else that I missed that was asked? All right. With that, we are adjourned.
Okay.